Welcome back to Creative Excuses. Today we are rambling about some of my favorite skill lines with the new subclassing system in Update 46. Every class skill line in the game is good for something, but we're only going to cover the ones that I use the most for my 1-bar Oakensoul builds for Vatashran Hollows and Vet DLC group play as a DPS. The footage that you see on screen is of my Red Mountain Ranger build, which you can see in this video over here, or on my Discord in a written form. It is the best 1-bar Arcane Archer I have played by miles. It is very fun and can score up to 312,000 in Vatashran Hollows if you're a good enough player, which is pretty wild and very fun. In this footage, I'll be taking on a Herald Storm with the standard build, and then a Dragon with a modified version with extra healing. Both of these were very fun fights. Alright, let's jump into it. So first up, I want to talk about the Storm Calling skill line. This is a very good skill line, and it's one of my favorites, both because it's on my Arcane Archer, my standard go-to main character, but also because it's just really good. It got some changes in Update 46 that make it pretty solid, and let's talk about it. So the first things that it does is it brings pretty solid damage to the table through its skills, right? It's got Overload, which can be used in crazy parse stuff and for very sweaty players. But on 1-bar builds, and especially the archers that I typically make, Overload's not that good. The skills that are really good on it for damage are Hurricane and even Liquid Lightning. Now Hurricane is of course really good, it looks cool, it's fun to use, it gives you extra movement speed, but it also is just a really strong area of effect dot. It hits every 2 seconds and it scales in damage the longer you let it go. If you let it run its full duration, it hits really hard and is a very solid skill. But there's a new one in this patch, which is Liquid Lightning. Liquid Lightning was like never worth running, or Lightning Flood, the other morph. These were never worth running before because they just didn't do much damage. Like, it was better to have a stronger hitting spammable and use a really strong single target dot than to use these because they just didn't deal that much damage. In area of effect fights, they were fine, but you know, not in area of effect fights, they were not good. They weren't good to parse with. And for the kind of content that I run, there is often a lot of single target damage that needs to be done, and they just weren't worth casting in those situations. But now that you can take the synergy from them, Liquid Lightning especially is really, really good. The synergy like doubles, roughly, I think it roughly doubles the damage that the skill deals and makes it worth casting in even single target fights, which is awesome. Now, Liquid Lightning is better than Lightning Flood in my opinion because Liquid Lightning has a 15-second timer on it, and the synergy cooldown is 20 seconds, right? So if you cast Lightning Flood, you're going to have 2 casts for every synergy, so the second cast isn't actually worth it. It's only really worth casting when you have that synergy available. But Liquid Lightning, you're going to get a synergy on the first one, and then get a synergy on about halfway through the second one, and then you can get another synergy on the third one in maybe in a 60-second fight. So Liquid Lightning is better in my opinion. It deals a little bit more damage per cast, and it works out with the synergy timer a little bit better. But these two skills are not all. There's also really good passives for dealing damage on 1-bar builds. So you get that 10% extra damage to start out the fight, which is really nice. And then you also get decent extra recoveries, which can be really helpful. You get health, stamina, and magic recovery, which can either help, you know, stack up your health recovery build, or it can give you the extra recovery that you need to make it through a parse or a fight, or to let you roll dodge or block or whatever. That's really helpful. But it also has decent extra weapon and spell damage for solo builds, where this used to be a passive that like buffed your weapon and spell damage by like 2%, I think it was, per sorcerer ability slotted, and now it's just you get an extra like 150 or 120 something. You get an extra flat amount of weapon and spell damage for each sorcerer ability slotted. That's actually a buff for the kinds of builds that I make, because that percentage bonus is really helpful when you have a lot of sources of weapon and spell damage and you have a really big base number. But we don't have that. We're not in group content. So in like lesser content, you know, solo content and small group content, the flat damage bonus is either better or about the same. So it's actually like really good. It's a very reasonable way to get weapon and spell damage on a 1-bar build. But of course, the signature skill for Storm Calling is Critical Surge, which is amazing for builds that only have 1-bar because you get so much healing from just one ability. You get the healing and you get the access to the passives like the 120 or so weapon and spell damage. And that makes it a really good skill. All of your healing for Vatashran Hollows can be taken care of by just Crit Surge, which makes Storm Calling on its own worth running for so many setups. And you can use it and stack it with some of the other class abilities that we might get to later that can heal you even more. And that's really good. That means you can go into harder content without using Pale Order, and that just makes your buff management easier. You might give up some damage. There's a lot of factors that play into that, but Critical Surge plus another set of healing skills can make you really tanky really easily, which is really nice. And it only takes up one skill slot while giving you access to some pretty reasonable passives. Overall, Storm Calling, great skill line. I love it, and it's very thematic and fun. I just wish the Execute was good. I wish there was an Execute morph of Mage's Wrath. I wish that was an Execute morph. And I wish Endless Fury was like a spammable morph. That would be amazing, but you know, for now, that's not what we have. The next skill line that I want to talk about is Animal Companions. Animal Companions is probably one of the best 1-bar skill lines. Like, one of the best. Easily. And that is because it does so many things really well. It is a damage dealer skill line, which just makes sense why it would be so good for 1-bar builds. But let's talk about why. So the first thing is it's got great damage and sustain on stamina builds, especially because of Deep Fissure and Fetcher Infection. Deep Fissure provides you both your major and your minor breach, but it also costs magicka and it hits really hard. And all of that is really good. It's a 9-second skill that is cheap to cast on magicka, so it doesn't cost any stamina. It hits really hard, like really, really hard. And for my builds, it brings major and minor breach. We are always in search of a source of major breach, and this does all of it. It does major breach, it does minor breach, which means we don't even have to run focused aim or a source of sundered in order to get that minor breach access, which is great. It's so good. The sustain on it is good, the damage is good, it's good. It's also area of effect, which makes your cleave better. And 1-bar builds can often, especially 1-bar bow builds like I love to play, can really struggle with cleave because you have so few skill slots and your main spammable is going to be a single target spammable. So it's really nice that Deep Fissure takes care of major and minor breach and area of effect, providing you your best debuffs. It is great cleave, providing lots of damage to an area of effect. And it does plenty of single target damage, dealing like 60% more damage than a buffed up snipe, which is insane. It's so good. But Fetcher Infection is also really strong. It's a good magicka costing damage over time skill, but it also gives minor vulnerability, which is a multiplicative damage taken debuff, which is freaking awesome. It's great. It also has the advantage that it hits very hard every second cast, getting that like 60% damage buff. So overall in a fight, it's going to deal around 30% more damage, depending on the length of the fight. It's like 30 to 40%. It's very good. Fetcher Infection is great. And again, they're both magicka costing, so on stamina builds, they don't cost you any of your primary resource that you're going to be spamming your brains out with Snipe or Wrecking Blow or Rapid Strikes or whatever it is, right? That's all very good. But it also has great damage because of the critical damage boosting passive. I think it's called Advanced Species. It's so strong. On a standard 1-bar build with Animal Companions, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 Animal Companion skills slotted. So that's 10 to 15% extra critical damage. Now in solo play, it's really hard to get really high critical damage values. Up until this patch, my critical damage values on pretty much every build I can think of ranged from like 70 to like 90% at most. And now, thanks to passives like this, and combining with some of the other skill lines, we're able to get over 100% very, very, very often. And that makes critical chance stuff way more valuable. It's really good, it's really fun, and you get rewarded for using the Animal Companions skill lines. Which, if you're keeping track, the third Animal Companion skill that you're very likely to use on a 1-bar setup is the Bear Ultimate, which is amazing. The Bear Ultimate hits really hard, it adds hemorrhaging damage, it can stun, small adds, which is really nice, it can absorb damage for you, which is incredibly nice, and of course, you don't ever have to actually use it, you just keep it out. You can use the Strategic Reserve Champion Point passive for an extra 1500 health recovery before buffs, which is amazing. That gives you a lot of extra healing while still dealing great damage. It's kind of awesome. It's kind of a unique playstyle, I think, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, you can always use the ultimate in execute range, especially. That's when it becomes really worth it to just pop one and deal like 100k execute damage real fast. That is nice, but I don't use that very often unless I'm like ending the dungeon and I really want to get like every last bit of score, right? Finally, Animal Companions is also great and one of my favorites because it comes with a decent spammable that can heal you when you cast it, and that can reduce the amount of healing that you need to build into your build otherwise. It's awesome. It also comes with a purge if you need it, and extra magicka or stamina sustain if you really need it from the betting edge. It's kind of just a really solid all-in-one kit. I really like Animal Companions. It is probably one of the best skill lines for Oak and Soul 1-bar builds, and that's a really neat thing to be. Next up, we've got Ardent Flame. Ardent Flame is a really good skill line. It's got some decent utility with access to things like Burning Talons, which can heal you and give you a little mini burst heal while dealing a solid, damage over time skill. But the real thing that I love Ardent Flame for, if you saw my video on the Red Mountain Ranger, is Flames of Oblivion. Flames of Oblivion is just an incredible skill. It's direct damage, but it deals damage over time. So it gets a really big tooltip while being direct damage, which means it plays well with things like Weaving Blows. It plays really well with the new Tideborn set, which is incredible. It's just such a good skill. And just like Deep Fissure, it's also an area of effect. So if you're fighting more than one enemy, really if you're fighting up to 3 enemies, it can deal really good single target damage and excellent area of effect damage. Flames of Oblivion is so good. It also functions as like an area of effect spammable, which makes it kind of flawless in a lot of ways for Vatashran Hollows because it auto targets, so you don't have to be aiming at something to hit it. It can be a little finicky, but as long as you're in combat with something, it'll hit it, which is really nice. And it's just such a good skill to have because it's dealing lots of single target damage, and you can spam it if you really need to clear out 3 adds at a time really quickly. It's great. Love Flames of Oblivion. Love Ardent Flame. The passives on it are like not amazing, but Flames of Oblivion kind of makes up for it. It also comes with Major Breach though through Noxious Breath, which is really strong. It's a 20-second Major Breach on a pretty solid damage over time skill, and that's a really good thing to be. A lot of builds can make use of that. I have found that it's not the best, and the real thing on 1-bar builds that makes Ardent Flame really strong is Flames of Oblivion. But that Major Breach is not bad and can give you access to another area of effect spammable, which is really strong. Overall, Ardent Flame is great. I do think if you make like a whip build, it could be even better than I'm rating it here, but I think it's really good anyway, so we're gonna leave it at that. Next up, we've got Assassination. Now, if you have been watching any build videos over the past couple of weeks since the Update 46 PTS came out and since the patch has come out, Assassination is insane. It is incredibly good for a lot of reasons, but let's go over a few. The first one is that it's got a really strong melee spammable. You can either do the Magical Morph, which gives you like Minor Breach, and I think Major Berserk, right? Minor Berserk? I don't know. It gives you a pretty good Magicka melee spammable, but the melee spammable gets automatic crits, which is really good. So it's going to increase your crit chance effectively on its own, which is really strong. But it also applies Sundered every time you use it, and that's really, really strong. It's in some ways like a melee version of Snipe, and that's a really good thing to be. Snipe is great, and that automatic Sundered is so much damage. It's a lot of free damage, especially on 1-bar builds where you often end up getting 30 to 60% of your damage from a spammable. That's a really good thing to be. So Assassination gets that. We're also going to talk about the passives in a second, and that just adds to the fact that spammable is really good. It also has 2 really good semi-spammables though, and that's Merciless Resolve or Relentless Focus and Lotus Fan. Now, Merciless Resolve or Relentless Focus you can use as a semi-spammable. You light attack 5 times, light attack weaving, and then you pop off the spec bow, and it just hits like a truck, right? Merciless Resolve will heal you, and Relentless Focus just gives you a bunch of passive weapon and spell damage. To my knowledge, Merciless Resolve, if you're actively using it, is better, and if you're using it for the passive buff, then Relentless Focus is better. They're both really strong though. You can use them to supplement your sustain in a build. You can use them to supplement your damage. Merciless Resolve can be used to supplement your healing. They're just really, really strong. They're kind of a staple. But even if you're not actively using them, they make really, really strong passive bar buffers because they give you access to all of the really good assassination passives, which we're going to talk about again in just a second. The other really good semi-spammable though is Lotus Fan. Lotus Fan gives you mobility. It gives you a Magicka skill if you're, a stamina build. So it can kind of help your sustain out a little bit. It deals area of effect damage, and it deals a 5-second dot that ticks, I think, every second. So it works like the DK's Talons, but it's on a good skill line. And it works like the bow's Acid Spray. But again, it's on a good skill line, and it's not Acid Spray, which I kind of hate. Overall, I really like Lotus Fan. I know a lot of people say it's like really clunky to cast, but I've not really found that to be the case. I've kind of enjoyed it. When I used it on my Wild Guardian Nightblade setup, I thought it was really fun, and it actually helped out in Vodashan Hollows a lot because you get extra mobility, so you spend less time running around, and that's a good thing to do. Overall, I find Lotus Fan is very fun and makes for a great second semi-spammable in the skill line. Assassination also has a really good execute though, which is insane. Why does it have such a good spammable, 2 semi-spammables, and a really strong single target execute? That's all so much already, and that's ridiculous. And that doesn't even get into the passives, which I guess we should talk about now. The passives in Assassination are absurdly good. You get 2.5% crit chance for having each skill slotted. You get 7% crit chance for having a skill slotted and then critically striking, which is like, you just get 7% crit chance for free. It doesn't, the trigger condition isn't like so rare that it ever drops off. It's just there. That's insane. On top of the already probably 9.5% crit chance that you get for just having one skill slotted, you also get 10% crit damage, which is insane. So you're just getting massive crit and crit damage buffs from your passives just for having one skill slotted, which is kind of what makes Assassination so good. You can just slot Relentless Focus, never use the skill, it's just passive, and you get 400 free weapon and spell damage, you get 9.5% crit chance, and you get 10% crit damage. That is absurdly good. That's why you're going to see so many Assassination skills show up in the 2-bar build world. You're going to see a bunch show up in the like Pale Order 1-bar stuff that Hyperioxys does, and you'll even see it show up in some of the stuff that I do, even though honestly I don't really like this skill line. It's a really good skill line, and I do like Lotus Fan, but I don't really like the rest of it that much, but I don't really like using the skill line that much. It's just like not a theme that I find super enjoyable, even though it's so insanely good. You also get free sustain. Every time you kill an enemy, you get 1,000 magicka and 1,000 stamina. That's crazy. In Vodashan Hollows, that is really good because you're killing a lot of ads all the time, so you don't really have to worry about sustain. And in a lot of content, that's still true. You just get so much free magicka and stamina from it. Like, this one passive is basically the same as having Bloody Renewal and Siphoning Spells active at the same time. That's ridiculous. On top of all of this, you get one of the best, if not the best, single target ultimate in the game. It gives you a 20% damage buff on the enemy that you've just hit with it, and it deals, you know, decent enough damage. That's insane. That's so good. And if you slot one of the morphs, you can actually generate 10 extra ultimate every time you kill an enemy. That's so good. Like, that's so good. You get to use this so often in quite a few fights. Assassination is just cracked. It is probably too good. All right, next up, we've got Aedric Spear. Aedric Spear is one of my favorite skill lines. I really love the theme of it. I love that it's got like kind of a mixture of skills in it. For the most part, I love the skills. I actually wish some of the skills I could use more often, like the spear throw. I don't even know what it's called, but the spear throw is great. It is one of the coolest looking abilities in the game. It's very satisfying to like huck a spear across the room at somebody, but it is just crowd control. So I don't like have no reason to use it in PvE ever. Like, there's just never a reason for me to use it. I don't ever need to stun something so bad that I need to slot that skill. But it is a very cool skill, and I wish one of the versions was a spammable. Anyway, Aedric Spear comes with some very solid damage passive setups thanks to Burning Light, Balanced Warrior, and Piercing Spear. Burning Light gives you the extra damage tick every time you deal 4 ticks of damage to a single enemy, I think, or every time you deal damage 4 times. It's not as good as it used to be, where it used to hit an area of effect, and now you can only hit it on like one target at a time, I think, but it still deals very solid damage and contributes to a parse just for having the skill line slotted. You don't even have to have a skill slotted to get Burning Light, and that makes it very good for a lot of setups, especially ones that are like skill heavy, like Arcanist. Necromancer could be a little skill heavy, and so could Daedric Summoning skill line, right? If you're using Daedric Summoning, you're probably going to have a lot of stuff on your bar, and Burning Light can buff you even though you don't have any Aedric Spear skills slotted, which is nice. Balanced Warrior is the same way. It just gives you some extra weapon and spell damage and some extra armor just for having the skill line. You don't have to use any skills for those bonuses, and that's really strong. It really is. But if you do use at least one Aedric Spear skill, you get Piercing Spear, which is 12% critical damage. 12%! That is really high. That is obviously, it's almost as high as having 3 animal companion skills slotted. It is higher than having 1 assassination skill slotted. Like, it's so good. 12% critical damage, and that makes it pair really well with things like assassination or animal companions, because you can just stack up so much crit damage really, really fast. And then obviously assassination gets you a bunch of extra critical chance. It's really, really strong. And not only is it strong, the skills that you're likely to slot in are pretty good. Jabs or sweeps are both really strong skills. Jabs and sweeps both hitting full area of effect damage makes them really good cleave. Sweeps obviously heals you, which means in against enough targets, you're going to heal quite a lot. They pair really well with things like crit surge because they hit really often. Overall, jabs and sweeps are just really strong. Or you can slot Blazing Spear or Luminous Shards, and those give sustain to your team and a little extra damage on Blazing Spear. Or you can give yourself sustain with Luminous Shards, which is really nice. But the real kicker is that you can slot the ultimate, which is so good. It's a very strong, solid area of effect damage ultimate that is very satisfying to use. I like that it has a little cast time. I know that can be annoying to people, but it has a little cast time. It's got a little wind up and big smack. It's great. Super fun to use. And that gives you access to that 12% critical damage without having to sacrifice one of your 5 normal abilities, while giving you a very reasonably strong ultimate. It hits hard enough in single target that it's worth using. Like it just is. It's a good ultimate. Aedric Spear is very fun. I find it has been very good on 1-bar setups and is one of my favorite skill lines. I really do like that ultimate. I like cheap ultimates that are satisfying to use. The bear is a cheap ultimate, but it's not that satisfying to use because you just kind of wave your hand and then the bear does something. I don't get to do anything, and that makes it a little less fun. But this, you really get to feel like you just smacked a big group of enemies, and that is a lot of fun to me. So Aedric Spear, very good. Very happy with it. The next skill line to talk about is Gravelord. Gravelord is another really good skill line. It's got really good passives and a couple of really good abilities. It's got the fantastic semi-spammable Blast Bones, which can really help your sustain with Magicka or Stamina because it is so cheap to cast. Every other cast is like 50% off, so it costs very little to use. It hits really hard in area of effect. Always applies the disease status effect, which is another area of effect status effect, which is pretty cool. And it's just really good. It's not super satisfying to use because, again, you just kind of raise your hand and summon this skeleton. But it is really good. It's a really strong skill. I've enjoyed using it more than I used to, which is pretty funny. Gravelord and Blast Bones can also be used to give your rotation like a really consistent rhythm, like 1-2 Blast Bones, 1-2 Blast Bones. And some people really like that rhythm, so I think Gravelord is really fun because of that. But Gravelord also has excellent passives for solo damage dealing. You get 3,000 penetration just for using Blast Bones or Unnerving Boneyard and keeping that up. You get a ton of critical chance in Execute, which is wildly strong, especially on higher critical damage setups, which we've talked a lot about already. And of course, you get extra dot damage, which can be nice on a lot of setups, but it's not quite as strong as it is on a 2-bar setup because most of our damage is going to be direct damage. And because Tideborn is so strong, we're not really incentivized to build into a lot of dot damage. But it is nice. It's there. It'll affect your poison status effects, your burning status effects, and any of the Gravelord skills that you're using especially. You just get really solid skill and passive choices from Gravelord. It's really good. You've got a really strong ultimate for group play, especially with major vulnerability and some decent burst damage. You've got Mystic and Detonating Siphon, which are both solid damage over time skills that provide a ton of sustain and decent area of effect damage. And again, even the spammable is pretty decent. Though I haven't used it very much, it does get extra bonus damage every 3rd cast, which is pretty nice. And then, of course, the Skeletal Archer can be a really solid single target damage over time skill. And if you're not using any other Gravelord skills, can be used to keep up that 3,000 penetration, which is really valuable. Overall, Gravelord is a really good skill line if you need a source of major breach and another 3,000 penetration. I do enjoy it, but it's also like not my favorite theme, so it's hit or miss for me. I do like using it, but I don't use it all the time. Last, and of course not least, we have Herald of the Tome. Herald of the Tome is absurd. It is so good, specifically because beam builds are cracked. 1-bar Arcanists are by far the best Oaken Soul builds right now, and you can see that in a video that I'm going to post later this week. They are absurd. They can hit like 55,000 damage single target, without anyone else's buffs, and they can do all of that damage in area of effect. Absolutely insane. Beam builds are crazy. Pragmatic Fate Carver is almost the perfect solo tool. It is excellent single target damage. It has godlike cleave, even with the 6 target cap, and it has a huge damage shield that's going to keep you healthy. It also deals direct damage, which now plays really well with Reaving Blows to keep you even healthier. It's just so good. It also is buffed by Tideborn, which is the best set for the kinds of builds that I like running. It is just so good. Pragmatic Fate Carver, I think, is too good and could use a nerf. But even for non-beam builds, Herald is a pretty solid skill line. There's Recuperative Treatise, which provides good sustain and even functions as a strong damage over time skill because it deals direct damage every 5 seconds, I think it is, and those hits are actually pretty strong. It also provides you with sustain. Like, it's just a really good skill, actually. I think Recuperative Treatise and some of the passives are worth slotting Herald of the Tome just for this one skill, which is pretty weird, but it's kind of fun. You've also got Fulminating Rune, which is a solid damage over time skill that gives access to some of the passives, and it's got a little extra area of effect direct damage hit on it, which makes it just a solid skill. If you're in a group, it's also really good because it provides 3 synergies for extra damage. Fulminating Rune in group content is excellent. You've also got one of the best burst damage ultimates in the game with either morph, though I'm personally partial to the Tide King's Gaze because I don't like the small area of effect on the damage, and I'd rather it like chase targets. That's just nice to me, even though I know that the other one is higher damage. I'd rather not lose the damage because, you know, I moved and the enemy moved with me. The passives in Herald of the Tome are also shockingly good. You get a ton of free penetration for slotting any of the Herald of the Tome skills. You get good weapon and spell damage for using either a sustain glyph on your weapon, Recuperative Treatise, or proccing something like the overcharge status effect consistently, or I think even Magicka Steel? I think even Magicka Steel might proc this passive. It gives you a bunch of weapon and spell damage for proccing your sustain in some way, which is really cool. You also get free extra status effect damage and chance, which is also, of course, really good. Status effects can provide a lot of damage on your builds. And all of these passives work for non-beam builds, which is really important and really good. Beam builds and Tentacular Dread builds, of course, also get access to the 12% critical damage, but you only get that for like 7 seconds at the beginning of the fight if you use Recuperative Treatise and you don't have any Crux spenders on the build. Overall, though, Herald of the Tome is actually really good even for builds that don't want to use the beam. Of course, if you're using Herald of the Tome, there's kind of a really good reason to just use the beam, and that's that it's available, you have access to it, and it's the best. It's so good. But if you really don't want to, you don't have to, and you can still get really good results out of Herald of the Tome. So how would I rank these overall? These are going to be my rankings mostly on my favorites, not really their power. In their power, I'll put that ranking on the screen for you right now. But for fun and my favorites, here's how I'd rank these. I think Animal Companions is overall fun and really powerful. It's got a good theme. That's just a good skill line. Animal Companions is great. Second, I'd put Aedric Spear because the ultimate is just so satisfying to use. It's kind of like an area of effect class themed Onslaught, and Onslaught is my favorite ultimate in the game. I just wish it was good. Stormcalling is my third, and that is because Crit Surge is great. It frees up so much space on the bar for other things because you don't have to worry so much about healing, and it pairs really well with other healing skills like the beam or like sweeps or anything like that. Stormcalling is just really good. Fourth, Ardent Flame. I love Flames of Oblivion. I think it's so fun to use and it hits so hard, and it's cool that one skill is so strong that it's worth taking that skill line, and the passives aren't even crazy. So that just makes Ardent Flame fun for me. Herald of the Tome is my fifth favorite. I like using this one for non-beam builds because it's just a weird thing to do, and I like doing weird things like that. It's really unconventional to use it without the beam, and it's fun to do so. I also really appreciate the opportunity to use Recuperative Treatise and actually generate some extra resources to play with. I think that's fun and a neat sustain tool. Sixth, I've got Gravelord. It's a really good skill line. It's just not my favorite thematically, and so it's this low. But seventh is Assassination, and this one is really fun for my Wild Guardian Nightblade, but otherwise I just don't really like the theming again, and I really don't like actively using Merciless Resolve or Relentless Focus. It's just not that fun for me to like count the weave stacks and everything. I don't enjoy that gameplay. I wish it had the counter for me, so I always knew how many stacks I had and when I can spend them. but also I just don't like weaving that skill. It doesn't feel good because it comes out so fast, and its post-fire delay feels so long. It's just not my favorite. But I do really like Lotus Fan, so I wish I got to use that a little more often. I also don't really enjoy the ultimate that much. It's fun to use, but it's only single target, and I really need area of effect ultimates on most setups. And so I just don't like it that much. I do really like using it in PvP though, so for that, Assassination could maybe move up above Gravelord. But we're going to leave it at number 7. Anyway, these again are not the power rankings, these are just my favorites. Yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and until next time, I'll see you all in the next excuse.